Hey guys, Jengar here. Welcome to Swedish Air Force's Rank I tutorial and guide. In this episode I will give you an overview of every individual Swedish plane in Rank I, and after going through them I will guide you through possible grind sequences and potential targets for talismans. The premiums will actually also be looked at in this video because there's not a lot of them. Although the footage is RB, this guide will still be useful for other modes as well. I hope this will be a valuable resource for you and will help you in your decision making as you go through the three. Timestamps and links to separate videos that I made on these vehicles will be in the description below. Make sure to give me your feedback in the comments below. Swedish Gladiator, the regular one, at 1.0 battle rating, a reserve plane. It sits right here in the tree, starts everything off together with the more unique J6B, but the J8A sits right there. It does not have any armor, this plane, so it is quite vulnerable, although thank God it does have self-sealing fuel tanks. That is quite nice. It has 4 guns, that is quite nice. The 8mm, 400 rounds of ammo for the outer pair, 600 rounds of ammo for the inner pair. So the firepower is quite nice, and that is one of the strong points in this plane. Let's have a look at her. The J8A, a Gladiator, the start of the Swedish fighter line, sitting at 1.0 battle rating, and the famous reserve planes. Yeah, so the Swedish get a Gladiator. The Gladiators are not fantastic in what they do. They are quite a jack of all trades and then average in everything they do. But they do have a few strengths that are nice and you can work with that. First of those is the climb rate. This plane can climb pretty decently and you can get up there with a little bit of side climbing here and there. Of course, again, in up tiers against the CW21, for example, you are in a disadvantage. Also against things like the E1, the BF109 E1, you will be outclimbed, but against anything else, this plane will do pretty well and will climb with the rest of them, so that is nice. Durability is also a strength in this plane. It can take a lot of damage, which is good, and it has some solid firepower in there as well. That is also nice to have for guns, although whether you could call this a separate strength, I don't know. I think that's just regular firepower on most planes. Many have 4 guns. It's a weakness when you have 2, but it's not really a strength when you have 4 guns, right? Let's go to the weaknesses. It is lackluster all round. It is a jack of all trades that does nothing particularly well. It doesn't excel at anything and has a problem dogfighting against other biplanes. It can dogfight against some of the monoplanes, but there is many monoplanes like this Frenchie here that can outturn this thing, and you really have to, you know, rely on your reflexes and your pilot skills to get the advantage. But especially the turn time and the roll rate are not things that this plane shines at. Those are 2 weaknesses. The turn time isn't great. It's one of the weaker ones if you look at all the biplanes combined. And the roll rate is definitely not a shiner either. So there is that, especially against Russian I-15s, the Japanese early planes, and well, CR-42s or 32s and all the other jazz. Even some of the American early planes, except the pea shooters of course, can compete with this thing, so that is definitely not good. The flight style in the plane is boom and zooming. And that is particularly important against other biplanes, so at its battle rating or in down tiers, and turn fighting against monoplanes that you can handle. But the CW21, both the Kai-21s in the Japanese and the Chinese line, and the A5M4 are things that are difficult against the Seahawks. Against the Hawks you are also in trouble in this plane, against the American Hawks. They can compete. Is this plane competitive? I would say yes, but barely. Just the bare minimum. Is this plane fun? I would say medium. You can have fun in it, of course. It's a biplane. It is always fun in a way, but it's not particularly fun. It's not particularly strong either. So yeah, it's medium fun factor for me. Is it recommended? I would say again medium. It is not the first plane I would choose for the Swedish. I would go for the unique J6B, but yeah, it's a Gladiator. You can fly it if you want. So after the Swedish Gladiator, we're looking at the J6B, a unique Swedish plane that I really like for that reason. It's unique, it doesn't show in any of the other trees, and it's quite a nice plane, nice and maneuverable. It sits right here as another reserve plane at 1.0 battle rating in the tree, and yeah, very nice plane indeed. No armor protection though on this plane, which is, well, unfortunate as always. But that's what it is in the early planes. It does have a self-sealing fuel tank that is quite nice. And it has two guns, two 8mm guns with 500 rounds per gun. Right here. Nice centralized firepower in a nice unique plane that we haven't seen before. I think it's nice and slick looking. Let's check her out. So now we're looking at the J6B coming after the Gladiator in the tree. It's also a reserve plane, so you immediately have access to this plane, which is quite nice because I would prefer to fly this thing over the Gladiator. Absolutely, this plane is a lot of fun. It is much more maneuverable than the Gladiator. It also has good climb rate, and yeah, it's fun to fly, I would say. And I always prefer these unique planes from trees that just are new, and it's a fun experience. Also 1.0 battle rating. So the strengths in this plane, I've already mentioned it a little bit. It's a good turner, it has nice maneuverability, making this plane much more competitive as a dogfighter at against other biplanes, and that is fun, because that is what the biplanes are really all about, right? Dogfighting, turn fighting, fighting it out that way. It's a lot of fun. The climb rate in this plane is also quite good, and really helps you to get up to altitude and start with a little bit of boom and zooming, although the plane is not too fast. That is also one of the first weaknesses in this plane, the speed. It is not a fast plane. It is considerably slower than the Gladiator, which already, you know, is not the fastest plane on the planet. But that thing is competitive in speeds at its battle rating. This J6B is slower than most other planes, but it makes up for it in turn time, and it is really competitive there. Only the I-15, the Kai 27s and the A6M5 are really considerably better than this plane, noticeably better than this plane in the turn rate. But there's a few others that can compete a little bit, like the CR32, and for the rest this plane can outturn pretty much anything it faces, and that is nice because that makes it a very competitive dogfighter, which is good. Another weakness is the offensive guns. Yes, the offensive guns. Well, as you know, the Gladiator is does have the 4. This one only has 2 offensive guns. So you really got to get them on the target very well. I mean, things will still die, as you see in these clips that I have here. But of course, sometimes you miss, and with 2 guns, it is a weakness. You find it with the Japanese as well, and there are several other nations that have planes with 2 guns here and there. It's just a weakness. You take a little bit longer, and in big dogfights, being long on an enemy can be a big disadvantage, as you will have a problem when somebody else focuses on you then. So yeah, more guns is better, finishing things off quickly, and you can lay your focus on something else again. So the flight style in this plane is pure turn fighting. It's not good at boom and zooming. It's not too great at energy fighting either. So it's a turn fighter, and it does that quite well. Is it competitive? Yes, definitely it's competitive. There's only 4 planes or so that are more maneuverable than this one, and yeah, it can definitely compete, and it's a lot of fun. The fun factor, I would say high. It's a joy to fly. It is nice to maneuver in this plane, and you get a nice sense of the dogfights in this plane. Is it recommended? I would say only medium and nothing more than that. It is, well, it's a decent plane. Yeah. Moving on to the J11. This looks familiar, doesn't it? Yes, it's a CR42 Italian. Before that, once you know, a special premium in the German line. Now well known for the Italian line. The biplane that doesn't turn. It is a true Italian, but this one is Swedish. Very nice. It sits right here in the tree at 1.3 battle rating. After the 2 reserve planes, you have the J11. As I said, the biplane that doesn't turn, a true boom and zoomer. It does have some armor as well, giving you a little bit extra protection for the pilot. Coming from the back, if you get shot, you have a little bit less pilot snipes, which is always good. You have the fuel tanks sitting right here, self-sealing, which is good. And you have the two enormous Italian machine guns. They have the Swedish names, of course, but these are the Italians, that's for sure. 450 rounds for a gun. Not too great, those guns, but let's have a look at her. We're looking at the J11, well known in the game already, the CR42, and it was known in the early days as the German Mark Collins CR42 German premium plane. It is now, I don't think it is there anymore, I'm not sure actually, but I still have it in the German line, and I also have it of course in the Italian line, for which it is now well known. This is the biplane that cannot turn. It is a plane that is not very maneuverable. It can even be outturned by most of the monoplanes at this battle rating. So that's definitely not good, but let's have a look at what the strengths in this plane are. 1.3 battle rating, that's where it sits, after the J6B, the first non-reserve plane in the Swedish fighter line. Speed is a strength in this plane. It is quite fast at a 1.3 battle rating, and you can make use of that speed in boom and zooming. The climb rate in the plane is also very good. It is one of the better ones. You can definitely get up to altitudes, and yeah, it's very competitive when it comes to climb rate. Another thing is the durability. This plane is very durable. It can take a lot of damage, and that is also nice when you're in a pickle. Definitely not a dogfighter though. The weaknesses in the plane. Well, I would say the offensive guns. It has two 12.7mm machine guns, but those are the Italian brand, and we don't call them the spaghetti guns for nothing, right? They feel very inaccurate and not always do the damage that you would want. So yeah, the guns for this thing are a downside. Also, the maneuverability is a big weakness of this plane. It cannot compete against almost anything at its own battle rating. Only in up tiers do you get planes that are less maneuverable than this plane. So yeah, it's the worst maneuverable biplane in the game, and that is a definite disadvantage. The flight style in this plane is thus boom and zooming, and if you do have a lot of energy, you can energy fight in it as well. But boom and zooming is the main flight style of this plane. You're gonna use the climb rate in the plane, you're gonna get up high, and you're gonna then use the speed in the plane and the climb rate again to get up, to boom and zoom on your enemies and to you know, beat them into submission that way, because you definitely don't want to be turn fighting with this plane. And sometimes you have to, but you will know what I'm talking about. One of my newer squadron mates the other day said, "Why am I being outturned by a monoplane in this thing? This is a biplane, supposed to be good." That is the mistake that many beginners make. Biplanes are supposed to be good in maneuverability. Well, this is one of the exceptions there. This one is not maneuverable, and you got to be careful in this plane. So boom and zooming it is. Is it competitive? I would say yes, as a boom and zoomer, with the climb rate it has, with the speed it has. It is competitive. It just has weak guns, so the finishing is not too great. Is it fun, this plane? What is the fun factor? I would say medium. You know, you can't dogfight with it, so you got to be disciplined and disciplined in the plane to boom and zoom. Is it recommended? I would say medium as well. If you like boom and zooming, you can definitely do that in this plane, and it can be fun, but be aware of the less than average turn fighting capabilities in this plane, and you can still be successful in it. So we arrived at the Swedish attacker line, and it starts off with a dive bomber, the B-17B or the Saab 17. Another unique plane to the Swedish line. It is fantastic looker and it's sturdy. It is a nice plane to start off with in the attacker line. Let's see where she sits in the tree right here. Starting off at 1.3 battle rating. He does have a little bit of armor to protect the gunner and the pilot, so that is good. The fuel tanks are self-sealing and they are pretty small, so that is a very good benefit. I didn't have any fires in this plane to speak of, and you know, it's a good thing. You do get a fire now and then, of course, but you don't have huge, big-ass fuel tanks in this thing. That is great. You have the guns with 500 rounds in the wing, so you have offensive guns in an attacker. That is amazing. Can supply a support role after throwing the bombs. Let's have a look at her. Ah, the B-17B. We have arrived at one of the jewels in the Swedish Rank I. This is a fantastic dive bomber slash attacker. Close air support, as you might call it. This thing is fantastic, and I really had a lot of fun in this plane. It is one of the recommended planes in the Swedish line. It is also a unique plane, which is also quite nice. So yeah, definitely a plane you want to look at. 1.3 battle rating, the start of the Swedish attacker slash dive bomber slash interceptor line. What are the strengths in this plane? The durability. It can take a shit ton of damage, and it is always nice to be able to soak up that damage. The offensive guns. As an attacker, as a dive bomber, it has 2 offensive guns in the wings, and they can be quite lethal, so there's that. The bomb loads are nice and versatile as well. So you start with 9 550 kilogram bombs, which is quite nice in the beginning for an attacker. So yeah, I like that. The dive speed is fantastic. And you also have horizontal energy retention that is absolutely great. And you can, you know, come from your dive, attack a column, slowly turn around, not losing too much speed, and then just go back to your airfield and go again. You often get a second run in this plane and not get caught by the enemy fighters. But you can also look for the enemy fighters, like I was doing here, and try to dogfight them. That can also be a nice, funny thing. Without the bombs, this plane turns into quite a bit of a fighter, actually. What are the weaknesses in this plane? The maximum speeds in a straight line are not fantastic, and it doesn't accelerate too great. And the climb rate isn't too good either, so you cannot get back up to altitude very easily. So yeah, there is that. What is the flight style in this plane? It is a dive bomber slash attacker slash close air support. It is not really suited as a base bomber, so you are really down to dive bombing, close air supporting in tank RB, and having fun that way. The plane does a fantastic job at that. You have the forward facing guns, you can engage fighters, you can dive on things, it doesn't reach its maximum speed too quickly, you can attack, you have a lot of bombs that can be efficient. It's a great aircraft. Is it competitive? Yes, absolutely, with an exclamation mark. I would say this plane is very competitive. What is the fun factor in this plane? Well, I would say high. The B-17B is an absolute joy to fly. Once you have dropped your bombs, you can function as a support fighter. I mean, you're not the most maneuverable plane around, of course, and you're not the fastest plane around, but still, you can support your allies, especially when you're flying in a squad like here. You can support your squad mate by, you know, coming in and getting the planes that are attacking him. That is always fun, right? Versatility is high in this plane, as I would say. Recommended. Is this plane recommended? How high do you rate her? High. High, of course. This is my favorite plane in rank 1 for the Swedish. The B-17B. It's an absolute joy to fly, and she can do a lot of things. It's very versatile, and that makes it fun for me. Drop your bombs, go fighter mode, and engage. Moving on to the Swedish bomber line, the start of that is the B-3C, sitting at 1.3 battle rating. Interesting, unique plane again, sitting right here at 1.3 battle rating. Very nice bomber indeed. Has no armor protection at all, so yeah, your gunners die rather quickly, unfortunately. The wings are very fuely with all self-sealing fuel tanks. That is good, but you can catch a fire when you get a hit on the wings. But the central fuselage is all completely empty of fuel tanks, which is actually quite nice. You have 3 gunners, all with 8mm guns. The spread is actually quite good for 3 gunners, but it is not fantastic, the gunners on this plane. But all in all, I quite liked her for the maneuverability. Let's have a look at her. Ah, the start of the Swedish bomber line, the B3C, a very specific, unique bomber that is quite nice. I like these unique things. The Swedish 3 is full of them, and I enjoy it. I mean, we had some copy-paste trees, of course, with the Chinese tree, for example. And, well, quite predictable what you get there. You know pretty much everything, but the Swedish line is much more unique, and I quite like it. What are the strings in the B3C at 1.3 battle rating, the first bomber for the Swedish? The speed in this plane is actually quite nice. It is a fast bomber at this battle rating, and in a dive you can outrun a lot of fighters, also enabling this plane to often get a second run in. And if your second run, if this in a match where the battle is quite equal and planes are low fighting each other, you often get a chance to get a second run on a column or on a base, and well, I mean, that makes you grind all the more faster, right? So that's very good. Speed. Maneuverability is also an upside to this plane. It is not quite as maneuverable as the Japanese Kai-21 bomber, but this plane definitely comes close. It is also quite maneuverable, which is nice in a pickle when you have to turn and fight a little bit until one of the fighters comes and saves you. That's what you hope for then, right? The bomb loads are not many, but they are nice and diverse. You start off with 16, I believe, 50 kilogram bombs. You can go to 4 250 kilogram bombs, and then you have a torpedo. Now, it is not fantastic, it's not uber, but I like these bomb loads. They are versatile, they give you options, and yeah, so bomb loads are definitely a strength, especially those lower ones to attack columns. This plane is maneuverable enough to go after the columns, so that's why I like them. The weaknesses in this plane are definitely the gunners. You have only 3 gunners. They operate the smallest caliber, and they are placed, well, they are placed reasonably, but it's not too great. It's really not too great, the gunners on this plane. There's a lot of blind spots that you have on the placement of them, and the gunners are just a general weakness, so the survivability, the defense in this thing is not too great. The flight style in the B3C is, you can do both actually. You can do the base bomber role and a close air support. Of course you cannot dive bomb in the thing, but well. A base bomber is the main role with the 4 250 kilogram bombs, or you can go with the 18 50 kilogram bombs and go close air support. This is also nice in tank RB. Yeah, there's a lot of small bombs there, so you can kill a lot of planes potentially. So yeah, nice. Is it competitive? I would say absolutely yes. It is quite a nice bomber. It is quite maneuverable and fun in the bomb loads. 2 separate sets that gives you 2 rolls. It is quite nice. Is the fun factor high in this plane? How do you rate it? I think it's medium. I think the defensive gunners make it frustrating sometimes when you get attacked, that you just get a few hits and then get put on fire or something. So yeah, but the other things, the flight styles and stuff, make it fun. And it's quite sturdy as well. Is it recommended? How highly do you rate it? I would say medium. This plane has enough upsides to be good, but it also has enough downsides to be frustrating. As I said, defensive gunners and survivability are not too great. But for the rest, I like it. So, as I've said before, we are looking at the premiums in the Swedish rank videos because there is so few of them. In rank 1 you have a premium gladiator. Yes, it's a gladiator again. Iacobi's J8A. Well, where does it sit? Sit right here, 1.0 battle rating. Same story as the regular one. No armor protection on this vehicle. You have the fuel tanks again right here, and you have the guns with 600 rounds on the inner pair and 400 rounds on the outer pair. It's a gladiator. They are a bit lackluster. Is that true as well for this premium one? Let's have a look. As promised, we are looking at the premiums in the Swedish line in this guide. So here we go. This is rank 1 premium time for the Swedish Iacobi's J8A. Another gladiator. My god, why did I choose a gladiator as the premium plane for the Swedish? Why not a premium J6B or something? Something unique again. But no, it had to be a gladiator. Oh well, I guess they didn't have that much to choose from. A 1.0 battle rating, that is nice. By the way, these gladiators in the Swedish line do not have the war emergency power problem that the Mark II has in the British 3. So there is good when you use web, you actually do not go down in speed and you go up. Engine power works. Woohoo! That is nice. Same strings though, the climb rate and the durability in this plane are good. And are the strings in the plane. You can climb, you can go up to altitude, and you can start boom and zooming with this plane. It is also durable. It can take quite a few hits before it dies often. And it can take a little bit of punishment, which you're gonna need in this plane because it's absolutely not maneuverable, which is one of the weaknesses, which we come to now. It is not maneuverable, it is lackluster all round, just like the regular one. Doesn't have much to work with. So if we're turning, dogfighting, you have to be very careful what you're flying against. The roll rate also is not fantastic. And yeah, it just doesn't shine at anything, man. The gladiators, they are just jack of all trades that are average at pretty much everything. And I would prefer a biplane that is good at turn fighting, for example, and bad at the rest. And you can at least you can turn fight. But in this plane, well, as an experienced pilot, you can, you know, go between the rolls. You can boom and zoom against biplanes, and you know all the planes from your head. So you think like, okay, this plane. I have to be careful with this plane and such. But you know, for beginning pilots, the gladiator really doesn't help you perform and really makes you doubt yourself. So yeah. But you know, as a more experienced pilot, it can still be fun. Oh yes, and you know, you get a bit sarcastic in this plane. The flight style in the plane is boom and zooming against everything that turns better than you. So that is the biplanes, that is the Guide 27s in both the Chinese and the Japanese line, all the other Japanese early fighters, and the CR-32s, for example. Well, maybe the Hawks as well, the American Hawks for monoplanes, and all the biplanes, of course. This plane has to be careful with turn fighting, and then, of course, has to boom and zoom against pretty much everything. So you do have to be patient in the beginning. You do have to make sure that you side climb, get to be the highest plane, and from there you can do some damage in a gladiator because it does have the offensive guns, and when you have the altitude you can actually boom and zoom with the plane. It does have decent speed. It's not a strength, but it's not a weakness either. So yeah, boom and zooming is the way to go in this plane, I would say. And turn time when you have to against a plane that you can. Is it competitive? Yes, but barely, just barely. Fun factor is medium, nothing spectacular, as I said with the other one as well. It's not great. Is it recommended? How high do you value it? Well, it gives you a little bit more reward, but I would go for the Marco Moraine, the premium in rank 2. It sits at 1.7 battle rating, and it's much, much better than this plane. So yeah, I would not recommend this. We have arrived at the guide section of this video. There isn't much to look at, is there, yet at the Swedish Rank I. Only 5 planes with a 6th as the premium, and those are 2 similar planes, the same planes actually, just a different skin on this one. So for fighters, my personal preference lies with the J6B right here, the second reserve plane. I would stick with this plane and maybe even put a talisman on it and grind through it, this whole shebang, and then go to rank 2. But of course there is a debate. This plane doesn't have the firepower that the Gladiator has, nor does it have the speed that the J11 has. But for the biplanes I prefer to dogfight, and to learn dogfighting you need a maneuverable plane, a plane that actually helps you in this performance. The J6B is by far the best dogfighter in rank 1 for the Swedish. That's why I personally would go for the Swedish J6B, which is just the most fun plane of these 3. The J11 is better at boom and zooming, so if you want to start off with trying to learn to boom and zoom, I would advise you to grind through the J6B to go to the J11 and then go for that plane. If you want a little bit more firepower, you can go for the Gladiator, but the Gladiator is a jack of all trades. It doesn't do anything particularly well. I never quite liked the Gladiators, although they can perform in the hands of a good pilot. But for a beginning pilot, I wouldn't recommend it. I would definitely say go for the more maneuverable plane. This one here. The 8mm are effective enough for the Swedish, and they can punch a hole anyway. And the maneuverability of the J6B will definitely help you in performing better compared to these other two planes. Yeah, but if you want to boom and zoom, go for the J11. Now, if you are a bomber pilot or an attacker pilot, I can wholeheartedly advise you the B-17B. Put a talisman on it and go for it. The talisman I have on the bomber here was given to me by the game. I earned it. You know, sometimes you get a talisman rewarded after a good match. And I was lucky enough to get one on the bomber. The bomber isn't half bad either, but I much prefer the B-17B for its versatility. You can drop bombs, you have a turret, you have forward-facing guns. After throwing the bombs, you can go into the fighter role. And if I would have to give an advice, totally the B-17B is actually the best advice to give. It is the best plane, in my opinion, of rank 1 Sweden. And if you want to keep it simple, just you know, take the J6B, grind the B-17B, and stick with the B-17B until you reach planes of rank 2. Simple as that. This premium, is it competitive? Well, they chose a Gladiator to make Swedish first premium, and the Gladiator isn't fantastic. I definitely do not recommend you to get this plane. I reviewed it not too long ago. Well, as I said, the separate review is in the description. Yeah, I will go into more depth about the details of the plane there, but this thing, well, you know, it's nice, it gives you more rewards, but you can put a talisman on the B-17B and have a lot of fun that way as well. There's also a separate review on that one. But yeah, no, I much prefer the B-17B, and if you want a premium, you should go for the rank 2 Morco Moraine. We'll talk about that in the rank 2 video. But yeah, that's it, man. The B-17B has my ultimate recommendation for the grinder for rank 1. If you want to keep it to a fighter, you should go for the J6B. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll go on with rank 2 pretty soon. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button, become part of this community. If you are already a subscriber, don't forget to like the video, do leave me a comment, and if you really feel like helping out today, make sure to share the video with your friends and let them know about the channel.